Samech Vav, page Shin Nun Zayin.
So we go down to the noise and the theme of Oyer Yoshua and Oyer Oizer. And we saw that the word Oyer Yoshua, or the concept of Oyer Yoshua, was based on the word straight. The word Yoshua means direct, straight, and that was the Hamshocha of the divine light, Milmaila Lamata. In other words, from the Mashpia to the Mekabel, in this case it's from the Eibishter to the Nivroim, ultimately, also the Neotzolim and later the Nivroim. And we brought the Dugma from the Maimah of the Bahoyat Kisove, that we see that when a mensch has an awakening of the Rotzen, well, the Rotzen is Koyach Atzmi, Mamish in the Etzim of the Nefesh, Dovuk and scholars of the Etzim and Nefesh. And from there all the way down to carrying out the Rotzen, the Koyach Mamish in action. So we saw that the light and the Shefa of the Rotzen undergo a whole series of yeridas, descents, by way of being hoylech u'mishmayet. It goes down and becomes limited from step to step. As we saw that the Ika Gilui Oyer of the Ispilus of the Nefesh, Hu Barotzen. What the meaning of Ispilus is well known, means the effect or the arousal within the self. Ispalus, from the word po'al or po'el, which means to do or to act or to achieve. His pa'alus means what you do to yourself, what you do within yourself, your reaction within yourself. What any form of arousal or emotional stir within a person is called these pilers. So therefore the Ika Gila, these pilers of the Nefesh, is in Rotzen. We see that the first real arousal of a mensch and his reaction to everything around him is through what he wants, through what he demands from the nefesh to a certain inyan which he feels or he sees, and maybe he's right, or maybe sometimes he may not be right, depending on where in what direction the Rotzen is going. But he feels that he needs that inyan to perfect or carry out a certain need on the part of himself, and that causes the pilus of the Rotzen, the awakening and the arousal within the self of the will. And that's within the very essence of the Nefesh, as brought down, we learned earlier in Parsha Vayero, that the inyan of Rotzen is Hatoyes HaNefesh Mamish. It's the leaning and the derivation downwards of the Nefesh itself. So that's a very high awakening within the Adam, and that's called his pilots. And from the Rotzen we saw that it goes there, Mina Rotzen boil a Seichel, Midas, comes first of all into his Seichel. Now what comes into his Seichel is only a horror of the Rotzen, that's well known. But the Rotzen is a Koyach Makifi in its own right. The Etzim, the Rotzen is transcendent to all the other Koyachs. Whatever Rotzen comes into Seichel, is Rotzen allows itself to undergo a certain symptom, a certain miut. That's what he used the expression, the Rebbe Ahoylech Mismayet, that the Seichel should also be able to bring out reasons and to produce all sorts of explanations why he wants that and why it's good for him, why he sees in that as a very necessary and wanted thing for himself. The Seichel then gets working, and then it goes into another form of his pilus, but a lower form, and that's what we call midas, where he becomes awoken with emotional traits and emotional leanings that also justify and strengthen the maskana within himself that he needs, that inyan, and that inyan is very good and very ratsui for him. So that's the inyan of midas, but that's a further, like we saw earlier, that in order to get into midas, you already undergo a certain ha'ora from tiferes to amor, but that was the union of understanding, and that creates a new Geder of the Rotzen, a new revelation of Rotzen for Zohar, which is the Inyan of the Midas. And then we saw that from Midas it goes further down, and so on. Seichel of Midas, she'ein hagila kol kach. What in Seichel of Midas, the Gila is not like it is in the actual purity of the Rotzen. Ad sof Maisa, but it goes all the way down into action. Shehu hagilui lamaisa le'vod. And it's well known, the Gilui of the Nefesh in Maisa is very minimal. It's very not noticeable. The profundity of all the deep ispilius that have been in the Nefesh when he actually does something b'poyel. Because it could be it's a rather simple Maisa b'poyel. For example, if he wanted to buy something and he just walks into the store and pays, it's not a very profound action. Whatever it may be, the actual pu'ula b'maisa. So there, it's a much less gilui of all the high powers and all the high reactions that have been earlier in the Nefesh. So that's Yoshua. That's the way it goes. Milmaila Lamata. It goes in a series of relevant descents from one level to the other. If we take this concept of the returning light, the light which, as it were, reaches the last point and then causes a returning light, a light which goes milmata lamaila, as we brought it down, b'shem ha'sefer haboyer, avo b'esesfir do'el cha'iza ha'malchus hu keser. The beginning and the first shoresh of the giving of the light backwards, milmata lamaila, is in Sfiras HaMalchus. And Sfiras HaMalchus becomes, in this whole new Seder of the light going back upwards, but then it becomes the Keser. And we'll see as we go along the connection of Sfiras HaMalchus with the Inyan of Keser. I mean, every Inyan has its own particular diuk, its own particular exactitude. The fact that Daf Malchus, when things turn into Oyer Chayza, and the fact that Malchus becomes the Keser, that's B'diuk. I mean, there's certainly in Malchus which fitted for that task. V'hainu she'ika ha'oyer hu b'finas Malchus. When we're turning back now for Oyer Chayza, then the principality of all of the Oyer is Dafki in Malchus. Malchus mashpia l'chol ha'sfiros, just like it is in the coming out of the Yoshua, that the Ikka of the light is in Keser, and then it goes down to all into Chochmah and Bina, into Midas, like we saw the Dugma, that Keser, as well known as Rotzen. But we see by the Odin, first of all, he has a Rotzen, and then the Rotzen is Hoylech or Mismayet, from the level to level, till it reaches Malchus, which is in that is the end of the whole process, what we call the Sefer, to call Darki. But when all of a sudden the earth turns now in a form of return by Yeruchayzeh, then Malchus becomes the Ikar. That's where the earth is, as we might say, in its principal state of Turkey and power, and it begins to go back in even like we saw, a Mata Lamaila. Therefore, each mashpia l'chol it becomes the principality of the Oyer, and therefore it's the Ika mashpia, just like we saw in Oyer Yoshua. The Rotzen is the Ika. It determines and literally governs and is mashpia into all the developments later on. How says the Rebbe? From that it would follow that when Oyer Yoshua reaches its last point, which is Malchus, as well known, that's the last of all the spheres. So then it tends to, having reached its last point, its lowest point, it then tends to reflect, as it were, backwards and begin traveling milmata l'mayla. And we're going to see that now as we go along in a few more details, but that's going to demand his bonus. What is this whole inyan of literally hitting the last point and then turning into a reversity, like going back Milmata Ramayla with a special power and a special gilui of that oya in the lowest of all points precisely. So that lowest point, the Hainu, at a point where the earth turned, it came first of all into that Ver Yosha, and then it literally hit that lowest point, and then it turned into Er Koizer. And there it becomes tremendously significant in the sense that becomes a Keser. So there must be some principle that Kilo inside Malchus, both things happen. On the one hand, it's the completion of the Amshocha of Er Yosha, and then all of a sudden it's the beginning, and a very powerful beginning, and a very significant Aschola of the return of the Milmatala Maila. So then there must be some sphora, some inyam which is built inside this whole concept. But even Ashpoa, Mepchinas Amalchus, Meacha Shehi Bepchinas Keser, Ale Ashpoa, he gam came bedugmas even Ashpoa, Shemepchinas Keser. He said, just like, since we're saying now that the whole manner of the influence of Malchus has now become bedimian and doima to the union of Keser, not only bedoima, it's become mamish now in a whole new Seder, it's become Keser. Then we have to say that the type of Ashpur that it gives is also bedugmas, it's similar to it, and it's an example of the way of the Ashpur that comes from Keser. So just like we saw the Keser's Rotzen, like we pointed out earlier, that Rotzen is a koyach makifi, that Rotzen is an all-enveloping and transcendent koyach in its original state, where it begins in the Etzem HaNefesh. Then the Rotzen can literally overtake and overpower all inyanim, because it's a makif. And the only way it can go down from level to level is if it allows itself to be matzutzam and so, what you might call weakened in its powerful effect, and then it can go down through the other spirit of a behemoth rotzen is a makif, which is makif for kol hakoyche, and to all of the inyanim both of seichel and amidas, meaning the rotzen how it is in its original form, the emes inyan of rotzen. Therefore, the truth is that rotzen doesn't need to go through seichel, it doesn't need to go through midas. That's only a special chesed what the Eibishter made, that it mentions able when he's got the capacity to bring his rotzen into different forms of hamshacha within him that make the rotzen take partnership with all the other koiches, and that's for the shleimus ha'odam. That's part of the whole tachlis. So I mentioned he should always koiches should interrelate, but the emes is that rotzen didn't need all of that mitzad etzem koicha rotzen, and if there's a need for a very, what you might call, courageous act on the part of the Rotzen, or a very definite act of its own expression, then Rotzen won't wait for Seichel, and won't for Midas, and won't wait for anything. Rotzen will just go and oblige all the other creators to step aside, or at least be bottled to it, not to interfere, and to say, oh yes, and Rotzen will go straight into Maisa. And when it does that, it does it with a form of like a gezeda. It just says this is what we're doing. There's no place or even time, as you might say, for all these considerations of seichel, midas, and so on. So the fact that it does go through all of those inyonim is only a special chesed that the Eibishter made, that it can do that. But it's not necessary. The inyan of Rotzen, as is well known, can be poil, mamish, berega kememre, mamish in a second. It can be poil that all the inyonim of the goof will follow its instruction or its decree. So now that's so we see then that Rotzen is a maki. It's a koyach makifi. It's a transcendent power which just transcends and rules over all the other koyches. And we saw that even within those developments inside the koyches, you've got to have tiferes shebemadrega elyoina, but that's the Ein Sof, and that can be megala the Rotzen, because the Rotzen is an unlimited koyach, even when it's come into the limited koyches. it needs a special vehicle to carry it further. That's the Indian from Tiferes, the aim and Nasa Kesel and then we saw that Tiferes the Zohar and Nasa Kesel Lamalchus. So wherever it goes, it carries with it a certain Indian of its power as a Maki. So if we're now going to say that Malchus has become the Keser in Ur Chayza, and that means that it's Bedugmas, the Oivan of the Indian for Keser, which means that its whole relationship to all the other spheres going back now, Momata Lamaila, all of them are botil to that Indian of Malchus, like all Koiches Pnimiim are botil to Makifim. Yeah, all the revealed powers of the soul are botil to something which is Makif. So that means that now Malchus has become the Makif compared to all the other spheres. And it says the Rebbe, that's the Indian, the Indian, Oilo al Gabehen. That is the Indian that we saw by the Keser Shem Toiv. That the Keser Shem Toiv we saw was the Indian from Maisa B'Poyo, the Indian from Mitzvahs, and Maisim Toivim. But they'll be equal to get the mentioned good name. But that's the Kiyum Ha'inyonim B'Poyo. But that's the Indian of Rotzen Poshu B'Poyo to carry out the Inyonim of the Eibusha B'Poyo Mamish in Kiyum HaMitzvahs and particularly in Gemilus Chasodim and things of that era and that nature. The Father said the Rebbe, that's what we mean, the Kesher Shem Toiv Ilo. It goes up al Gabayhen, it literally goes over there, as it were their backs, it literally climbs up over them. Well, that's the idea of a Makif. A Makif is something which transcends, and therefore it literally goes up and somewhat ignores all the details of all the other levels and just passes them over. Oila al Gabayhen. We're connecting now the union of Maisim Toivim in the form of Keser Shem Toiv with this concept of Ur Choyzer. And we're actually linking it with the idea of Ur Choyzer. Now we're going to have to see about that also as we go along. But what we're going to do is try and deal with some of the Misholim. What the Rebbe Ba'arichas Kama Misholim now, Behemshech, to indicate this whole idea of Ur Choyzer. And based on those Misholim, we're going to have to be Mizboinein. How do those Misholim connect with the Nimshal, which is Malchus here? And what is like we said, there must be some linking Sphora which makes this understandable, or makes it, as it were, real to the understander. So there said that Omnam B'Etzem B'Chinas HaOyer. I'm sorry, Omnam B'Etzem B'Chinas HaOyer. That in the very essence of the what you might call the testing point of the light. Hine Kisham Malchus Hi B'Chinas Keser Hu B'Chinas Oyer Na'alo. It's a much elevated light. Yoisa Gam B'Chinas Oyer De Keser Shemil Mailala Mata. Now here, before we get to the Misholim, the Rebbe introduces now a new concept, and therefore he begins with the word omnom. What omnom means, like, however, it's like a slight nuance in the argument. It always leads us to a new idea, which is not in any way completely new to what we said, but it's a new vista of that inyan we've been talking about. And he says that when it's in Malchus, and it becomes the inyan from Keser, in other words, the Ur Choyzer, how it is in Keser, then he said that's a more elevated and a more greater Ur, also compared to the Ur of Keser from Ur Rosha. In other words, the Keser of Nomaila Lamata, then the Ur, how it is in Malchus becoming Keser in Ur Choyzer. The Rebbe said it's a greater and it's a more elevated form of Ur. So now that also clicks into the mind of the intelligent reader why would we say that? I mean, up to now we've been saying the deer goes down and then it goes back. So, each one, as it were, takes on a new reversed situation. What was Malchus now becomes Keser. So the Rebbe said that everything that happens in Kedusha happens because there's some, what you might call, gain. Things don't just happen without there being some gain or Tosefes, Maila in one Indian compared to another. Therefore, if the Eibshter Kaviochel, in inverted commas, normally goes mil Maila Lamata, and that's the way everything functions, that's the way all the worlds come into being, all the spheres, all the shade of the spheres. If that wasn't, as it were, enough for the Eibshter, he has to have that it should also come mil Matala, Maila. It's got to somehow or another reach Malchus and then turn around. And like we pointed out in the name of the paradise, that in every sphere there's also a certain trait, that also the lights inside each sphere, how they undergo the different behemoths in that sphere, they also act in this way. So if the Eibshter could have had a world, and he did have it without the whole Inyan von Eur Chayzer, then why did he have the Inyan von Eur Chayzer? So we have to say that there's some Maila and there's some Inyan what the Eibshter's got in that through that he gains and he elevates in Yonim in such a way that they wouldn't have been had they been without the Seder of the Bria, which is Ur Yoshua. So that's what we're now putting down, a new fundament, that the Ur, how it is in the Ur Chayzer, and particularly at the beginning of the Ur Chayzer, which is in the Inyan from Malchus, and now in that Seder Malchus becomes Keser, then if it's just the same, then what are the Eibshter? What's he doing? Playing upside down? See, he goes one way and he goes back the other way. We have to say that there's some Tosefes Maila. And so the Rebbe said, the Maila is that the Oyer, how it is now in this new Keser, is a much more elevated and greater Oyer than is in the Keser, how it is Mitzad no Maila Mata. Ki Ha'Oyer Chayzer u'b'pchinas toikef ha'Oyer Yoytzer mipchinas Oyer Yoshua. The reason for that is because the Oyer, how it is in Oyer Chayzer, is a much more powerful, what you might call, driving force of the Oyer. The word tokef here, toikef, means, how do you call it, a starker koyach, a starker sharpness, which adds to the emphaticness of anything which is described as having a toikef. I say about a mensch that he's a toikef, and you mean he's a starker, he's not spoiled, and the word toikef implies a Inyan Achmi which lends hidden pneumistic power to this light. That's what it means, that it's got a toikef yoyser, mipchinas Yoshua. Hagam. So now says the Rebbe, and here we need to put on our thinking caps. Hagam de bepchinas hagilui v'ishpashtus yesh yisorin be'oyer Yoshua shehu bepchinas gilui v'ishpashtus yoyser. The Efsher, it could be Zel Masher Kosu B'Eit Chaim Shom, where he brings down the whole Seder, that's the Sphere of Yoshua, which you just mentioned earlier, a few lines back. He said it's written over there in the Eit Chaim, the Ur Chayzer, who b'pchinas Chalishus L'gabi Ur Yoshua, that the Ur Chayzer is weaker compared to the Ur Yoshua. Chalishus means like weak, lacking a certain power, lacking a certain strength, compared to the Yoshua. Fine, said the Rebbe, b'pchinas hagilui v'haispashtes, in the Inyan of revelation and spreading forward, as you call it, self-expansion, spashtes, then Einochanami, that's true, that the Inyan of the Yoshua has got a Maila compared to the Chayzer, And so much so that the Oyer Choizer is described as being, as it were, weak compared to the Oyer Yoshua. Aval, said the Rabbi, that's all in what we call the noticeable part of it, what you might call the part which is shot to Gilu, and the part which is shot to spreading forth of that Gilu. In other words, the what you might call the ha'ores, what they go with that Gilu. They spread out and they lead to other Giluim of the Oyer. So the Rabbi said, in those inyanim, then the Oyer Yoshua is stronger than the Oyer Choizer. Always a be'etzem ha'oyer, in the very essence of the Oyer, then the Bechinas Oyer Choizer, hu Bechinas toikef ha'oyer yoiser. He said it's a much stronger and more powerful Oyer. He said, now here begins these Mashalim. Now we'll go quite a distance with these different Mashalim. So the Rebbe said, for example, if the light of the rays of the sun hit, they beat, literally, they bang into makim, how do you call it? That hits into a cloud. Then he said there's like literally a throwback. Yeah. And he says that is called Oyer Hanoiga. How do you call it? Oyer, the what you might call the how do you call it when something gives off light?
Shining.
Not shining.
Illuminate?
Yeah, it's not so much illumination.
Brilliant.
Reflection.
It's a reflector.
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly. Noiga means like something that sort of sparkles, sparkles back at you. It's almost hard to look at. It's not just an ordinary light reaching. It's like something that jumps into the eye, like it sparkles, attracts attention. So that's called noiga. That's what clippers make. It's also in clippers. That's what noiga is like. It looks pretty good, but it's really, you got to watch it. It's very bad. Abamela said the Rebbe, when the shemesh hits clouds, noiga hu oyer mavhik yoiser. The word mavhik is the same idea. For example, mavik means what's the word? I can't think of it. Sprinkling, not sprinkling.
Sparkle.
Huh? Something like
Twinkle.
huh?
Twinkle.
Twinkle, yeah. Could be connected with the idea of twinkle. Yeah. In other words, it hits back at you in a sort of sharp and almost catching and difficult way to look at it. Sort of,
Flash. Flash.
Flash, yeah, it flashes, yeah. Mavhik means the idea of flashing, yeah. I mean, that's not the word I'm looking for, but it's not bad. Yeah. I mean, said the Rebbe, that's the union of Ukemoya er Hashemesh Hamakeh be'onon v'nasa er choizer v'hu er hakeshes. Yeah, the oil of the rainbow. Keshes is the rainbow. Harihu oyer chozak yoter. In other words, that he compares this idea of noiga, the idea of a shining, giving off light, to oyer mavhik, which is the same idea, to catches your attention and twinkles, glimmers, into your eye. He connects that with the union of the rainbow. And he says that the rainbow comes, that the oil hits the clouds, the oil of the shemesh hits the clouds, and there occurs a certain like springback. Yeah, and that forms the keshes. And he said that's an oil chozak yoter. That's a much more powerful oil than the oil which came to the cloud. And in other words, it's true. Hitting the cloud, and reaching a point of the cloud, and between hitting or banging against the cloud, then occurs this amazing feedback reaction which creates a more powerful oil. Even though these pashtas, it's not compared to the oil of the Shem. In other words, that ever notice that the oil of the keshes is very what you might call tantalizing. It sort of appears, and then if you get the wrong angle, all of a sudden you don't see it, and it's very, very delicate. And the more powerful it is, the more surprising it is to the seer. It's usually very, very delicate. Either the oil of the sun, I mean, we know in this summer weather what the oil of the sun is like. Yeah, the oil of the sun is very confident and powerful, and it shines and does its beauty with a lot of, revelation and expansion. It spreads all over the place. The ilu, the Indian of the keshes, is a very limited. You only see it in one, or very limited places. It's very, very delicate, and it attracts the eye. It shines into the eye in a very amazing way. However, said the Rebbe, begilui, you don't see that. But he says the fact is that that's a much more powerful oil than what the oil of the sun is. It's a oil chazak yuter. Now, why would we say that? If we're going to say it's very delicate, then why would we say that that's only in Gilur? Of the Pnimius, the keshes are very, very high and very powerful, light, more than what the Shemesh. So we need to understand that. And then he goes on to say, Ukiyaduach, by way of, what you might call adding to the whole picture, Da keshes u'me'akos Hashemesh hamakeh be'ha'ona. It's well known, says the Rebbe, that the whole Indian of the rainbow is from the hitting of the Shemesh into a cloud, or a series of clouds. You do it akos Hashemesh b'soifoi b'toikev yoiser. V'lochen ho avir atachtoin hu ham yoiser me'aver ha'emtzoi. Ki koyach hakos Hashemesh b'soifoi hu chazak yoiser. U'kemoy hazerach, and then we have another motion, b'koyach hari'ika akoyach yisosef b'soif hanachosef. So here we meet up again, says the Rebbe, it's well known that the hitting of the sun at its final point, at the last point, is much more powerful and has much more what you might call heat or tuike, burning power of the sun, more. And therefore, he said, the avia atachtoin, the air, mamish, alongside the earth which is mamish around the actual ground of the earth, is hotter than the air in the stratosphere. Avio Amtoi means the air between, the middle air, in other words, the space. So he said that the earth is, the air close to the earth is much hotter than the air up in space. So the Rebbe says, why is that? Ki koyach hakoas hashemesh b'soifoi, that the power, literally, of the smiting of the shemesh at its final point, who chazak yoser, it's much stronger. And then he said another example is like somebody throws something b'koyach, then the ikka hakoyach yisasef, assembles and gathers at the moment that it reaches the place which it's going to cause it to rest. In other words, the place which stops it, literally. For example, when it hits a wall, it will bounce back towards its rear. Due to the tremendous gathering power of the power of smiting. Having hit the wall causes it to jump back.
Stronger than a stone?
Huh?
Stronger than a stone?
So what he's saying is, that when it hits the wall, then the fact that the wall stops, and it becomes its final point, and the thing that's being thrown realizes that this is the final point, as it were, then there's created a new power from that collision, that meeting of the two, which is stronger than what it actually had when it was flowing through the air, and that new power makes it jump back towards the back. So what the Rebbe is learning is, and what he's saying is a very interesting principle, that what makes it jump back is only partially the amount of power that was put into it originally when he threw. In other words, that when he threw, he put a certain power into the ball, but that carried it to the wall. Without that, it wouldn't have got that far. It wouldn't have gone. But once it hits the wall, then there's a meeting of something which is causing an end. The wall is blocking. It's not going to be able to go any further. Well, that meeting of a soft in the power which has been carrying the ball causes a new thing which is called a koach choizer. In other words, that the fact that the thing stops it causes like almost an obstinacy on the part of the ball, or whatever it is, whatever object it is, that makes it spring back. So that, in other words, that the power of it having hit the wall makes it spring back more powerfully than what there would have been just purely mitzad the passage of it through the air. In other words, even if it just kept going through the air, and then something caused it to go back, somebody flipped it back or something, it would go back, and it would go back, with a certain interrelationship between the power that had carried it that far. But as when it hits the wall, then that hakoah, that itself causes a new tikboires, and the word tikboires means like reinforcement. That's what the word tikboires is from the word gevura, and it really means like reinforcement. In army language, if you're struggling and you bring up a reinforcement, then that's called tikboret. That's what it's called. An additional power, an additional force to where you are. So we're going to have to pause now because we're going to have to dump Mara. But what the Nakuda is, what comes out from all of this is, and this is where we've got to be misplain and we've got to understand good what is the message. That when a certain thing is going from its source downwards or outwards, it's going with a certain, what you might call momentum or power, which has been given by the source of the Leam Shofar. But when it hits what you call soft, or something which makes soft, in other words, it's something that says to it, I'm sorry, but further than this you're not going to go. Understand? This is like, there's a famous quip, the two friends say we're friends till the end, So all of a sudden he says, maybe you lend me $50, and he said, this is the end, we're no longer any friends. So anyway, something just comes along and says, this is the end. Something gets in the way, and says, no passage anymore. Well, that causes in the traveling object a new, as it were, a new finding of power, which causes it to go back. And that going back is really a big chiddush that it's having come down. In other words, it may not go as far back as what it originally. Usually, if you throw anything against a wall, it won't come all the way back to you, unless that's a very special rubber or something. It's made to balance back. Maybe it won't come back, and that's maybe what he means in the Eitz Chaim, that there's a certain chalishas in the Choizer. However, the very fact that it does bounce back, that bouncing is a very powerful inyan. That bouncing is a very powerful inyan, and that occurs from the fact that the Oyer Yosha met its soft point. And the meeting of those two inyanim together causes a new power. And that's the way we're going to learn it, and that's the way we're going to have to teach it. And that's why we got when the Shemesh hits the clouds, and that causes in the Shemesh a whole new inyan that without having hit the clouds it would never do. In other words, it reveals in itself a whole pneumius, a whole inyan which it's got inside itself. Because the oil of the Shemesh, and it's mashma that even the Shemesh has got in itself this inyan, but it would never reveal it, and you would never have picked it had it not hit the cloud. Or if you happen to be a scientist and you've got some lens and you make the oil hit the lens, then it'll show you all that. But if it didn't hit something and didn't meet this resistance to its process, what's the word, progress, then these things would never have occurred. Because at the moment that the Oyer Yosha meets a soft, then something happens, and there's a whole new power which is created, and that new power is called Oyer Choizer. And that reveals in the light of the Shemesh things that it would never be able to do without that. In other words, that they're there. They're bepnimius or behelim b'teich HaShemesh u'b'teich Oyroi. But they would never be miskala if there hadn't been this boom. They hit the clouds and then they become miskala. Mamela, the Rebbe said, really what happens is that even though the oil kesh is a very delicate oil, like we pointed out, it's a very, very dark and delicate oil, it's really a more powerful oil. It's pneumius, it's a much more powerful and tuikiv dika oil, and therefore it shows things that oil Yosha will never show. So that's the principle we're going to have to understand. First of all, we have to understand that more bidachis in the mashalim, and then we'll have to see how it all fits into the nimshalim, how it is in the union from Malchus and so on and so forth. But the Nakuda being that where the measured koyach meets an opposing koyach, an opposing koyach which says, sorry, but Adkar, this is the completion, then there takes part a whole new change in the oil, that the oil becomes another type of oil. And it says, you may be the end, but Dafka, because of that, I'm starting off a new beginning. So, and that's the Indian of oil. That's a very powerful, amazing concept, very tricky concept that we've got to really think carefully about. And somebody just said to me the other day, and all of a sudden I mentioned to them about Kof Manachamor. I don't know what was in the whole concept of Yota, the Rebbe's father, came into my mind. Because that's the idea of the Choizer from the, like the Sofa Tafki, because they made these terrible ends to everything that he was trying to achieve. Tafki, from that they started off a new light that's got no end. So a new light's got a tremendous power. And that's the Rebbe. That's the Rebbe, and that's everything. That's the whole world. It's turning Kofar up. Now, who do I say this to yesterday? Because in Kofar Nahmor we see the most amazing. Did I tell you guys this? In Kofar Nahmor, when the Rebbe's father was sending the Golas, it was a terrible thing. That's all I do, sending something to the Golas. Those days, terrible. He didn't see anything going on. On the contrary, the whole of his town was being closed down by the communists. Everything that he seemed to have achieved had been destroyed, and he was sent out to Golas. Just imagine that. What a take if that is not to give him. I'll say, okay, I'll just accept it. Well, you guys should just let me free. Only because of the Dvar Havaya. Only he didn't see anything. Normally, why do you have Mesiras Nefesh? Because you see what's happening. You see what's developing. And just, you get new power to have new Mesiras Nefesh and new effort and self-sacrifice, etc., etc. Oh, when you see the whole thing, it's just, you follow? And that's an amazing thing. That's the Indian. But the other phrase that came from that opposing stock. Okay, good. So we need to think more carefully about it.